This is Sparta! Hello everyone and welcome to episode number 35 of Movies Are Awesome, the show all about muscle cars. My name is Nathan Pottle, and thank you so much for joining me today. Today is an interesting episode. We've got Frozen 2 coming out at the end of the week here. I'm going to be checking it out and talking about it next week, so stay tuned for my review on that one. And while I was thinking of what I wanted to talk about this week, I really started thinking about how, Frozen culture, or the phenomenon of the movie Frozen has really shaped and affected our world, and I just want to talk about that a little bit. It's probably not going to be too long. Just some thoughts of mine and observations about this Frozen culture here. So this movie already came out pretty much exactly 6 years ago in November of 2013, and it was directed by Chris Buck and Jennifer Lee. Now, if you have not seen Frozen, you're probably at least familiar with it, especially with some of the songs, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later on. But in case you are not aware, I'll just run down quickly what the story is about. It's about two sisters. You have Anna and you have Elsa, and Elsa is the older sister, and she's about to be crowned queen. Her parents passed away in a montage in the beginning of the film, and she has these ice powers. And she keeps herself hidden away, and the kingdom is kind of she isolates herself. Not the kingdom, because they have trading partners and stuff. But Anna, the sister, is very outgoing and boisterous, and she wants to get out into the world, and she wants to meet people and do things instead of just staying in her castle all day. And Elsa wants to hide her ice magic and just be this seclusionist. So basically, at her coronation, her powers become known to the people, and she gets really scared, and she runs away, and she sets off an eternal winter, and it's up to Anna to find her and put an end to the winter. And that's basically what the story is. It's nothing special, it's nothing amazing. It is based off of I believe it's Hans Christian Andersen's story, The Ice Queen. Initially, in the script, they had some ideas for Elsa just being the villain of the film, and being completely evil, but after some developments and the creation of the song Let It Go, they redid the whole story, and then from there they made it about a bond between sisters, and it's about a sisterly love, and it's really unique in that sense. There isn't really any love interest in this movie, and I think that speaks to a lot of young women of I don't need to have a love interest, it's not all about finding a man and things like that. So it's really interesting in that respect. And then from this movie, it became so popular and made so much money. I should have looked up how much money it made, because it was a ridiculous amount. Pretty sure it's over $1 billion. Why don't I take the time to do it right now? I am live looking up what. My dad texted me. No, I'll reply to him later. What am I doing here? Box Office Mojo. We are doing this live right as I'm recording. Here we go. I'm typing in Frozen into Box Office Mojo. Came out in 2013. Worldwide, it made $1.274 billion. So $1,274,219,009. Now that's a lot of money. Pretty crazy for this original property. It just got so popular. It got a lot of repeat business, and people just kept going and going and going. Now, I only saw the movie in theaters once, but I did really enjoy it. And from all of that money, Disney kept rebranding and expanding on things. So we got a couple of short films, Frozen Fever, where Elsa gets sick, and it's her birthday, and they throw her a birthday party. And then we had Olaf's Frozen Adventure. Now, Olaf's Frozen Adventure was originally conceived as a television half-hour Christmas special. It got cut from that, and it's about 22 minutes long, and they stuck it in front of Coco in theaters. So anyone who went to go see Coco in theaters, you would have watched Olaf's Frozen Adventure in front of it. And while I don't detest this short, it is too long to play in front of a movie. And actually the woman sitting next to me in Coco leaned over to me and asked oh, like I thought we were seeing Coco, not this Frozen movie. And I had to lean back to her saying like, yeah, it'll play after this. It just happens to be really long. And like I rewatched Olaf's Frozen Adventure just the other day. I also rewatched Frozen. I have not rewatched Frozen Fever. I'll have to do that before I see Frozen 2, just so that I'm caught up and up to date on everything. But rewatching Olaf's Frozen Adventure, it's not awful. I think the biggest strike against it is that it made me wait 22 extra minutes before I could see Coco, and because of that, I resent it. Because Coco is amazing and it's beautiful, and if you have not seen it, what are you doing? Get watching Coco, because it is spectacular. But I'm talking about Frozen. So yeah, Olaf's Frozen Adventure, Frozen Fever, and it's, oh my goodness, this movie is so popular. And when we get into things like this that become so popular and so ingrained in pop culture, people start asking the question like, well, does it deserve all of this recognition? Is it really as good as everyone think it is? And I think in retrospect, I don't think Frozen is amazing. I do like it. I think it's a good movie. It's serviceable. It passes. There are some really stunning animated sequences in this movie, like for Let It Go. I think that is really beautifully animated. I think it looks great. But as far as some of the story elements, I don't think it quite works. Like the funny relationship song that the trolls sing, I think is awful. I don't like it at all. When I rewatched Frozen with my wife the other day, we actually just skipped that scene because it's not worth watching. It's not worth our time. If ever you have a scene in a movie that is bad enough that I will actually skip it, then you know that you have a problem, and it's something that doesn't really work. So I'm hoping with Frozen 2, they hold off on the trolls a little bit more. I don't need them singing a song. It just doesn't work for me. Some people might really like the trolls, but I don't know how to describe it. There's just something about them I find really grating and annoying. Just not that good. I think they do really target a younger audience when it comes to the trolls, as opposed to most of the other elements of the film, which is more general audiences. How did I get onto this topic? What was I talking about? I'm bouncing around on my notes here. I'm not going in order, and because of that, I am in trouble. So I was talking about stunning sequences. Yes, I don't think it's a bad movie. I think it's good. But we get into that realm where something becomes so popular that it all of a sudden becomes popular to hate on it and to act negatively towards this film. We're like, oh yeah, it doesn't deserve all of those accolades. Like, oh, it's not actually that good. And I don't think that that's the case with this movie. I think Frozen is good, not as amazing as the popularity would say it is, but I don't think it's a bad movie at all. And Frozen isn't even the only movie to suffer from this phenomenon. I think it's become very popular to hate on Avatar, and I like Avatar. I think it's a good movie. There are some dialogue issues, and yes, you can argue that the story is not as original as it would claim to be, but I don't think it's a bad movie, and it is visually stunning. Like, Avatar came out 10 years ago, and it still looks great. It's fantastic. It transcends, like, it was such a leap ahead in what it was doing, and that's why it was so popular, because it was something different, and it revolutionized the film industry. And now, 10 years later, it's a very common thing for people to say, like, oh, I hate Avatar, it's so stupid. Oh, like, it's just Pocahontas with blue people. And I don't understand why people need to be so outwardly negative towards something that's popular. Like, is it like this hipster type of mentality saying like pushing up the rims of your glasses to your nose, saying, oh, like a bunch of people love this, I'm gonna hate it to be different. But when everybody does it, it's not that cool. And obviously a lot of people went to go see Avatar because for the last 10 years it has been the highest grossing film of all time. Now it's number 2 because Avengers Endgame really pushed hard to break that record, and it did, and good for them. Like, Avengers Endgame's pretty good. And so that's what I'm trying to say here, is that really popular movies eventually suffer from this phenomenon of people just hating it for no reason, even though it's unwarranted. And while I admit there are things to criticize about Frozen, like the trolls, like I like I previously said, I don't think that the movie is a complete failure. I don't think it's completely awful. It is watchable and a good movie with good animation, good songs. Actually, let's talk about songs here. There's actually a lot of songs in this movie. When I was rewatching it, by the time we hit the 15-minute mark, we were already starting song number 4. As we go farther and farther on into the movie, there are less and less songs, and that's fine because you're getting heavier into story. But that's a lot of songs right off the bat with this movie here. I'm hoping that Frozen 2 is a little more balanced and the songs are more spaced out throughout the movie. But this isn't the only musical that I've seen this happen. La La Land is like this a lot. A lot of the musical sequences are in the first half of the film, and the second half are less so, and that's totally fine. A musical is a musical. It doesn't have to be like every 15 minutes you have to have a song. Like, it all depends on the story you're telling, I guess. But I'm hoping with the story that they're telling in Frozen 2, it is a little bit more spaced out. I don't want to go like half an hour without a musical sequence in a movie that's calling itself a musical. But the songs in Frozen, I quite like them. Other than the Trolls song, which is actually the last song that's sung in the movie, they're good. We have what is it called? The one that Olaf sings about being a snowman in the summer. I think that's a pretty fun song. We have like the emotional song of Do You Want to Build a Snowman, where Anna and Elsa's parents die, and we go through their lives together, figuring out like how they live and like their isolation from each other, and it's an emotional song, and it's quite good. I like it a lot. And then we have the song at the very beginning of the movie where they're just singing about ice that like doesn't really fit the tone of the whole film and kind of puts you in a weird headspace for this movie, even though it gives you kind of the pieces of what to expect from the film. I think that that style of song doesn't match the rest of the movie, and that opening sequence could be cut out, and we don't really need it. Now the big song, the one that people like to hate the most and make jokes about and all of this stuff, is Let It Go. And I like Let It Go. I think that it's fun. I think that the animation for the sequence is stunning. Idina Menzel, that's her name. It's not Adele Dazeem, no matter what John Travolta thinks. I love that clip at the Oscars where he says, "The wickedly talented Adele Dazeem." And that is not her name. It is Idina Menzel. I don't know what he was doing. Did he mispronounce it on purpose or what? I have no idea. But that sequence is really great. Her voice is very powerful. It's all about like how she's liberated from the world and she doesn't have to be scared of who she is and all this stuff. It's all very wonderful. And like I said, animation's great. And we get to see like the full extent of Elsa's ice powers. Elsa's ice powers don't make a whole lot of sense to me. There's no seeming like rules of what she can and can't do or like where her magic comes from. I think the second movie is going to be addressing that a little bit, so maybe I'll get some closure on the rules of her magic, because I like magic to have rules. I don't like Harry Potter's magic where they can just do whatever they want and it doesn't really matter. Sometimes they need a wand, sometimes they don't, sometimes they need to say a spell, sometimes they don't. They can make potions or all of these different things. It just doesn't have any rules or any kind of barriers or limitations except for when the plot says it should. And I don't like that. I just want there to be some rules about the magic and maybe a little bit of origin of where they come from and how it all works. Hopefully Frozen 2 gives me that, because I think that is my biggest issue with Frozen, is just like her magic makes no sense, because she can shoot ice. Sure, that's understandable. That's what her powers are. She can make it snow everywhere. Fine. But how can she make a dress out of her powers? Like a blue dress. That doesn't make any sense. And the biggest one is, how is she able to create life? Because the snowmen she creates, Olaf and Marshmallow and the Snow Geese, all are alive and they have individual personalities and all of these things. And I just don't understand how that's possible. And I understand that it's magic, and I understand that it's a movie that's targeted for children, but there's still should be some sense to it all. That's all I want. All I want is for it to make sense. I don't think that's too much to ask. But anyways, I think that Frozen has become such a huge thing. It's very, very popular. It was just recently Halloween, and how many Annas and Elsas did I see dressed up for Halloween? I saw quite a few. It's been a very popular thing for Halloween for the last 6 years. This movie is already 6 years old. That's absolutely crazy. And I think that the movie has held up for the most part, with the caveats of the few issues that I have with the film. I do think it still holds up 6 years later. Don't think it's amazing, but I think it's good enough to revisit and rewatch. If you guys have Disney Plus, go check it out. Frozen is on Disney Plus. So is Olaf's Frozen Adventure. I don't think Frozen Fever is, and that's why I haven't rewatched it. I will have to find it somewhere. Maybe it's on YouTube. I'll watch it there, something like that. I don't know. But anyway, Frozen 2. Are you looking forward to Frozen 2? I would love for you to let me know. You can reach out to me on social media. You can find me on Twitter at PoddleNathan and on Instagram at Poddle Productions. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. It is a bit of a short one. Next week when I talk about Frozen 2, it'll probably be much longer. I'm sure I will have lots to say, especially when we dive into spoilers for that film. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the show. You can subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, a bunch of other places. Please do that. And if you like the show enough, share it with a friend. Be like, hey, check out this podcast. I think it's all right. You can listen to Nathan look up box office numbers because he didn't do it beforehand. Things like that. Thanks so much for listening to today's episode, everyone. And if you have nothing else to do, go watch more movies.